covered 3 out of the 4 horsemen. And as a reminder, the 4 horsemen, the full term of it is actually the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, which is just the best thing. I swear to God, every time I get to tell a client that, like, I get this like joyous look on my face, even though it's like the negative communication patterns. But I like it. Again, so much of the Gottman method that I love is the language that I use and I teach my clients to use. And the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse just sounds like dun dun dun. So hopefully driving home this, like, the fact that they're negative and the fact that we want to get them out. Like, people, oh yeah, 4 horsemen. So to recap, we talked about criticism, often how a conflict or even a conversation is started, right? So that's that harsh startup. And the antidote, which is the soft startup. BFF of criticism, defensiveness, oh yeah, comes right after. And we know that the antidote to that is to take some responsibility. Where can you own your role, which obviously is easier to do with the soft startup, but sometimes really needing to, there's a criticism coming my way. Usually that means there's a need behind the criticism. Where can I show up differently right now? We talked about contempt, which is the worst of the horsemen. It's the #1 predictor of divorce. Really, really breaks my heart when I see it has entered a relationship, because it's really eroded that friendship and intimacy levels. And at that point, it's hard to get back on track because you've crossed this line of name calling and putting down, and often very violent language, and potentially violence, especially if we start mixing that with alcohol or drugs. Alcohol is overused in this country, and marriages. So if we're angry and we're being contemptuous and we're drinking, very often we're going to have violent language, if not physical violence, occurring. The antidote to contempt is really creating that culture of appreciation. Harder to do backwards, right? So if contempt's already come in, it's a bit harder to start to create that, because again, that line's been crossed, and it becomes harder to believe and trust that your partner loves, cares, and respects you, if they've been able to do that. So it's hard the antidote's there, but we almost got to pre-pump that up so we don't even get into the contempt. And then the final, which is why we're doing this video, horseman, is stonewalling. And what they found, I think, is really cool. What they found through the research, that stonewalling is actually our body's way of self-soothing. But we're not expressing that. We might not even know that. So our body is kind of just shutting down. And so it's things like, I mean, if you think about it, stonewalling. So it's like I'm talking to a stone wall, talking to, like, nothing's going on here. I've shut down. So things like arms crossed, right? Maybe I'm looking at the ground, not giving you any eye contact. I'm not like, I'm just like, I'm just gonna ignore you. Kids do this sometimes when they just don't want, my daughter's amazing at this, will just kind of ignore everything. Like, no, I can just sit here and you can keep talking or not, I don't care. And so that's stonewalling. Again, it's this way of protection. We probably got into fight or flight, right? So we're flooded, so it's the body's way of self-soothing. But we're not, like, using our words. We're not saying, I'm overwhelmed, I'm flooded, and I need a break. We're shutting down. Usually, a lot of times, this is based off of some history of trauma. And so if the other member of the couple kind of can get real flared up, real hot, real quick, and start yelling, the other person just doesn't know what to do. It doesn't want to engage in it, you know, and then shuts down, but also doesn't ask for the timeout. Which is then going to probably make that partner even more mad, right? So even if they haven't gotten to a really elevated level, and then you start to stonewall, unfortunately, we'll do things to get a reaction, you know? So Maybe if I call you a name, that'll get you to yell at me, because at least then you're participating in this. You're in it. There's some feeling that I'm getting from you. You're not just shutting down and you're just like devoid of feeling and you don't care about me and you're gonna leave me. And so if I just start screaming at you, calling you names, maybe saying you're just like your mother, like, or father who's like an abusive alcoholic, I'm exaggerating now, that might get you to participate. Not helpful, not healthy, not very functional. However, it often works. So stonewalling, we've already talked about flooding, and I kind of walked you through the steps of taking a break. So the antidote to stonewalling is calling a timeout. So start to pay attention. When you're shutting down, your body is like done. It can't, it knows that it physiologically, and that your brain is not going to be able to be creative. Like, it knows you need to be like self-soothed, but you're not verbalizing it, and it might not be getting up into kind of that logical part of your brain to be able to call the timeout. So it's really important, because stonewalling can, you know, the message that's coming to the other party, the partner, you don't care. You don't care about me. You can just sit here and not even engage in this kind of situation. So another reason why therapy is so amazing is that I can see that. Like, I can see a person shutting down. And sometimes it's like literally not even in like times of conflict. It's just one person just talking. They're just talking. They don't stop and listen. They're just talking and talking and talking, and this and that and this, and, you know, taking up all the space, all the energy. And the other person's like, I've heard this like 47,000 times. Like, I don't need to hear it. I'll check back in at the end and say, okay. But didn't hear any of it, right? So then this partner's like, how did you not know I wanted to do this? I've said it 47,000 times. But it was very much like critical, and it's about me, and it's just, again, it's just talking. There's not really any like statement of feelings. So I can see the shutdown. I've also seen the shutdown when there's conflicts, you know, a lot of just like, okay, they get real small. And again, a lot of times there's trauma. So if I know your history, which I will know your history, or your therapist will know your history if you're honest, when you do an intake, when you start to get to know and trust your therapist, that I know that this could be a result of some traumatic trauma event. Maybe your family fought all the time. Your house was not safe. There was yelling. Emotions being expressed in that way are not safe. So why do you think it's safe? I mean, maybe when you were a kid, you tried to stop it. People told you like to get out of here. So you don't feel like you can stop it now. Getting some help and tools, and have someone really be able to stop and find out, like a third party to help. Like, game changer, guys. Like, if you can use these antidotes, if you can start to use the language, you've changed the game. Like, you're ahead of the curve. I highly encourage you, if you're watching these videos, like I said, even if you feel like things are good, like, do a couple therapy sessions. It'll be amazing what you will learn, especially if you're motivated. If you're motivated and you're still really in it, and you like, no, we could probably manage some of these things. We get into some, you know, not a lot, but we do get in these fights that are really challenging. Like, you can change that, and then you can break a cycle, and then you can model your children, like, this is what conflict is like. It's connecting. It's connecting. It should be connecting. All right. Again, I'm here. Reach out. Questions, comments, concerns. That's what my son always says every time he does a little presentation. Any questions, comments, concerns? Referrals, anything. Like, I'm here. This is a really hard time that we're going through. All of these horsemen, I'm sure, are rearing their heads. It's time. So, hit me up. I'm here. Have a good day.